New York Attorney General Letitia James, her blockbuster $250 million plus civil case against Donald Trump and two of his children, Don Jr. and Eric Trump, is set to begin October 2nd of this year, pretty soon, right around the corner. And a judge now, an appellate judge, has put that on hold potentially and has at least called it into question as to whether that's going to happen when Donald Trump this week filed an emergency motion. It's called an Article 78 petition, where he is suing the Judge Arthur Engoron, directly, and basically accusing him of not making certain rulings in the trial that would actually somewhat decimate his case. It's literally, there was the case used to be, the Attorney General's case used to be against Ivanka Trump, Donald, Don Jr., and Eric, and it's to put them out of business, essentially, for lying to get loans, lying to pay lower taxes, lying to get insurance money, really just inflating the value of certain assets, deflating the value of the same assets, depending on what suits him. And the case was already dismissed against Ivanka Trump because they said that the statute of limitations, the judge ruled the statute of limitations does not include her, meaning she left the organization by the time the statute of limitations, which means you have to bring the case within a certain amount of time, she was already gone at that point. So the case, certain charges were dismissed about her. Well, all of her charges were dismissed. And the appellate court said, look, and Arthur Engoron, judge, you have to apply the same standard, the same date range to the existing remaining counts against Trump, Don Jr., and Eric. And Judge Engoron has yet to make that ruling, and Donald Trump is upset that he's taking time to do that. Now, let's just first of all remember that this is a bench trial. There's not even a jury here. So it doesn't really matter that the judge hasn't yet told them exactly where, when the charges involving the statute of limitations, what his analysis is of when that would be, because there's certain time periods that they pressed pause on, so it doesn't count, so it extends it. So there is some analysis there, and he's working on it, but he's not doing it as fast as Trump wants him. And so he went to Judge Friedman in the appellate courts, who actually granted this motion to be heard in the appellate court about this. And depending on what they rule, it depends on whether this trial will go or not October 2nd. So we have to stay tuned and see what happens there to see if this trial will be going. In the meantime, there are all sorts of court filings happening, because, it is somewhat business as usual in this case. And so you have to file various documents, make motions, comply with discovery rules, et cetera. And the Daily Beast is reporting that they got a hold of the witness list that General James has submitted as who she plans on calling at trial in this blockbuster civil case. And remember, this is the case that there's a companion criminal investigation that Alvin Bragg still has open and has not yet brought. He said that this investigation is still open. This was the case that started under my old boss, Cy Vance, and it was handed to Alvin Bragg as an unindicted investigation. And Alvin Bragg wanted to wait. They didn't have enough evidence, and the senior prosecutors there resigned in protest, and the case is ongoing. So this is the civil case that goes along with that. And in this witness list that the Daily Beast has reported about, they have said that the Attorney General's office, it's civil, they plan to call Trump as a witness, which, you can do that in a civil case. You can actually call the defendant to the stand, whereas in a criminal case, you can't, because they would assert assert their Fifth Amendment privilege. Question here, though, is would Trump assert his Fifth Amendment privilege knowing there's a criminal investigation that's still open? But he did sit for a deposition, a civil deposition, where he answered questions, which I think is the thing that Alvin Bragg was waiting for, and why he didn't bring his case at the time that it was handed to him when he was first in office, because he wanted to wait to get this more information and get this deposition. But in any event, prosecutors have indicated they plan on calling Donald Trump. They plan on calling his two kids, his three oldest kids, actually, Don Jr. and Eric, and they are calling Ivanka as well. They also plan on calling his bankers. They said that they gave a list. This list is supposedly 57 people are on it. And this will be the first time that Trump will testify in a court case under oath. Don't forget, he didn't testify in his E. Jean Carroll case. He didn't even show up. So although he sat for a couple depositions here and there, he's never testified under oath in court, which I think will be very interesting, because when he tries to get away with his, the way he acts on TV, whether it's, to Caitlin Collins on CNN during that town hall, he just talks over people. He says what he wants. He doesn't answer questions, and that doesn't fly in court. Even in depositions, you can do that because there's no judge. But that doesn't work in court, where a judge will control him and make him answer questions, and he'll be under oath. And if he lies, he can be prosecuted for perjury if it's a material lie. So Attorney General James is also planning on calling Rosemary Vrablic, who is the person at Deutsche Bank who kept giving Trump money and loans, despite the fact that the supporting documentation he gave was flimsy, incomplete, had lies in them, and his businesses were all failing. So, but she made sure that he got lots and lots of money from them. She eventually resigned from Deutsche Bank in the days following the January 6 attacks. And other Deutsche Bank current and former employees will also be called as witnesses. Also, according to the reporting, Peter Welch, the former senior vice president at Capital One Bank, and Jack Weisselberg, who's director at Ladder Capital Finance. Does that name sound familiar, Jack Weisselberg? Well, if it does, it's because he's Alan Weisselberg's son. Who's Alan Weisselberg? The longtime CFO of the Trump Organization, and he was indicted by Alvin Bragg, indicted by Cy Vance, along with the Trump Organization, and tried by Alvin Bragg. And they ended up giving Alan Weisselberg a plea deal, and he testified against the Trump Organization. He didn't testify against Donald Trump himself, but he did help convict the Trump Organization criminally on, I think it was 17 counts of tax fraud. So that's why that must sound familiar. And they're also planning on calling Attorney General James is also planning on calling current and former employees at Cushman Wakefield. So don't forget, that's the builders. They're like construction builders, developers who helped him value his properties, and those are the ones that helped him value his properties in ways that he was able to get bank loans and insurance policies. And this is also the company that Judge Arthur Engoron very briefly held in contempt last year for refusing to turn over documents for a period of time. So they're planning also to call Michael Cohen of the MeidasTouch Network, and because he was a longtime attorney who knows where all the bodies were buried during that period of time of the Trump Organization and Donald Trump's antics to lie about the value of his properties. So also from Mazars USA, which is Trump's long-term accounting firm, they're going to call people from that, who after they're the ones who, by the way, who Cy Vance, when I worked for the DA's office, Cy Vance's office subpoenaed Mazars for Donald Trump's tax returns, and Donald Trump fought that, went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court twice. Ultimately, Cy Vance was able to get the tax returns, and after that, that formed the basis of the Trump Organization prosecution, the indictment and prosecution. And after the conviction, the Mazars group, they basically said, you know what? Do not listen to anything we ever said. We can't stand by our numbers anymore against Donald, with Donald Trump. We just can't stand by them. So they've disassociated themselves with Trump, but they plan on calling an individual named Donald Bender from Mazars. And it'll just be so interesting to see Donald Trump have to testify, and to see how that goes, and to see he's going to have to admit to all his lies. He's going to have to talk about and justify how it is he tripled the size of his penthouse, for example, making up over 20,000 square feet. That's an objective fact that you can measure. Look, the penthouse is either X size or Y size. And as he said in his deposition, he could just say whatever he wants. He can value things however he wants. And that's what the value is. So we'll see. It'll be very interesting. Letitia James is going to show that this was persistent and repeated business fraud. That's what she's going to have to show at this trial that's set for October 2nd. We don't know who Trump's witnesses will be, and fingers crossed that this goes October 2nd, but stay tuned. We'll keep you posted on all things that involve Donald Trump and the intersection between law and politics. I'm Karen Friedman Agnifilo, co-host of Legal AF on the MeidasTouch Network on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock Eastern. Thanks so much for joining.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.